Okay, folks, so this is the third and final lecture in a workshop series here on writing. You got your term papers, you've got your research papers, research projects you're working on. We've talked a little bit about getting started with your writing, how that can be such a bummer, how it can be so hard to get started, such an intimidating thing. Some ideas about how to do that in the first lecture. The second lecture was all about writing processes, learning how to follow the writing processes to improve your writing. And this third and final lecture is more about deepening your writing with research, right? Even if you're a good writer, if you don't know how to research, then what's going to happen, right? Your paper won't be really all that stellar. So here's some tips for you. Starting your research, plan a schedule for yourself, develop a good thesis statement, and learn about the library, all right? Good things to remember. Plan a schedule, develop a good thesis statement, and learn about the library. 3 elements. So give yourself enough time to work. Write a schedule to help you keep track of time. Include time to search the library, read, take notes, write an outline, write a first draft, and revise the paper. Try not to set yourself up for a lot of late nights. People do better work when they're alert. You know, there's people out there, I don't need that. I work better under pressure. I work better all at once at the end. Well, you can go on believing that, but it's probably because you've actually never tried to set up a program, a regime of study that's really serious. If you want to be a serious writer, that's not how you write. So if that's worked for you up till now, that's okay. But if you really are serious about improving your writing, it has to be something that you don't just do at the last minute, but that you are always writing all the time, always involved in the writing processes. That's how you get better at anything. You just don't do it once and then let it be done, and then you wait until the very end and you do it. It has to be set up on a kind of a schedule for you. Number 2, develop a solid thesis statement. This is the question you propose to answer in the paper. Some professors will want to see the proposed thesis statement before you start your research, right? That's a good practice, actually. A few hints. How to make a good thesis statement. Keep it simple and specific. It's much easier to do research on a narrowly selected subject than a massive idea. Okay, so simple and specific. And then make sure your idea will work. Check with your professor about the suitability of the thesis to the assignment. Do a little preliminary research in the library to make sure there's enough available material on your topic. Okay? And then 3, familiarize yourself with the libraries you'll be using. So each library has its own system. To talk to one of the reference librarians about where and how to start. They're dying to talk to you. Really, librarians, very helpful. Your life will be made so much more simple if you start to pick their brain. They're smart people. So here's some examples of research sources you might consult for your own writing. All kinds of different places to look. Think tanks, Hansard, academic journals, periodicals. There's books and ebooks, reference books. NGOs have websites, right? They house oftentimes vast arsenals of research. There's newspapers, library catalog searches. There's Google, obviously, plus Google Scholar. There's magazines, blogs, podcasts. There's microfiche. I don't know if any of you ever look on microfiche anymore, but they're available still. Websites, obviously. Stats Canada, personal interviews, museums. I mean, the list goes on here, right? The one I've highlighted for us here, just briefly, is, websites, because, especially in high school and in elementary school, there's a move on. I think it's insane, personally. Sad. Fills me with tears. That, we're getting rid of books. And they don't even call libraries anymore in schools. They call them learning commons. I don't know. Anyway, books are passé. You go into the library at the University of Calgary here, they have a digital library, and you see more computers than you see books. So they're basically saying that, the way that we access information has changed and the rest of it. That kind of, I don't know. So this being the reality, and it being the case that even the books aren't being made available in schools anymore for kids, that more and more of it is moving to just having gadgets and computers and instant access to Google, that this is what everybody thinks education is and how it's going to transform things. Given that that's the case, what are we to do, right? Kids get on the internet and then they start to do their research on the internet, but if you search up birds on the internet, you're going to get 300 million, you're going to get like almost 400 million hits. So how do you tell if a website is a good source, right? When you're doing your web research, I would hope that you're not just doing website research. Like, really, I think it's very important for you to realize that that's not the only place. Like, look at this big long list that I've given you here of different sorts of references that you can use, right? Research sources that you might consult. Websites are one out of that whole list. So, but if you're going to use it, how can you tell if it's good? Well, what to look for? Purpose, authority, reliability, currency, and coverage. Purpose, is this an educational website? Is it a commercial website? Is it for entertainment? Is it promoting something? What's going on here? Does it have a hidden agenda? Is it trying to sell you something? Is it factual, or is it all opinion? Is it propaganda? Who's its intended audience, right? Purpose is very important when you're evaluating a website as a resource. What about authority? Is the author identifiable, or is he hiding? Is there contact information for the author, or doesn't he provide that? What is the author's background? What's his or her experience? What are their credentials or occupation? Whether they've written on other publications on the topic, right? Does the author cite his or her sources? Or are they just saying, is the site linked to often by other sites, right? Do other people have they deemed it to be a good site? Well, and again, just because other people think something's good doesn't mean it necessarily is, but it's one of those things that is worth checking, right? Like, how often is this cited by other people? Do links on this site lead to other reputable sites, right? Are there spelling errors, or is there incorrect use of grammar on their site? What domain does the site belong to? All these things speak to when you're trying to decide how authoritative is this particular source. Reliability. Do most of the links on the page work? From your evaluation of currency and authority, do you think the site will be there next time you visit it? Right? Is it being kept up? Currency. When was the site last updated or revised? How often is the site updated? Maybe it's been on there for a long, long time. Maybe it's no longer cared for. Maybe that matters. And coverage. What information is included and what's omitted? Is the page completed or under construction? All these sorts of things you would consider when you're deciding, is this web resource credible? Now, what about reading and note-taking during your research? Taking notes about what you're reading is very important. If the book is yours, and if you don't plan on selling it, it can be valuable to take your notes directly inside along the margins. It's useful to summarize main points, to comment or record your thoughts and responses, as well as your questions as you go along. So I also use different highlighters for varying degrees of importance. So I'll use like yellow for something that I think is important, but I'll use red or purple or something like that for something I think's significantly more important, right? And then I'll cross-reference page numbers in a text and between texts. That can also be helpful. So, where something comes up on one particular page and then it comes up on another page, I'll cross-reference the two things so I can find the connections across the chapters. So that's how I do it, and it doesn't mean that you have to do it that way, but that's good for when you're taking notes, when you're doing your research, right? Another popular strategy is to use small index cards. So if you can, you buy several different colors. If your subject has 2 or 3 separate main ideas, you can color code the research. And you can include full bibliographic information on each card with page references where appropriate. All right? Alternately, consider keeping a spiral notebook in which you record all the bibliographic information necessary, as well as page numbers, quotes, etc. I think that's really important when you're doing research, folks, is including, the page references there, because if you read something and you just took notes on it, but you can't find it again, that can be a real pain in the butt. It can just take up so much of your time just trying to find that single quote that you remember from somewhere, but you don't remember where it was from, right? If you put the page numbers in there along with the the bibliographic information at the beginning of each entry, you'll find you'll save yourself so much headache. So from the outset or later on, you might record your notes in a searchable Word file instead of on a spiral binder like that. Just type them in on a Word file, and then whenever you want to search for something, you go up to the little find function and boop, it'll all pop up for you, right? What about primary, secondary, and tertiary resources in your research? Primary sources are original materials. They're from the time period involved and have not been filtered through interpretation or evaluation. Primary sources are original materials on which other research is based. They're usually the first formal appearance of results in physical, print, or electronic format. They present original thinking, they report a discovery, or share new information. So, primary resources, there's some examples of different primary resources that you could consult in your research. You can pause that and have a look at it if you like. Secondary resources are interpretations and evaluations of primary resources. They're not evidence, but rather commentary and discussion of evidence. So there's some examples of secondary sources that you can pause and look at there for a little bit. Tertiary resources consist of information which is a distillation and collection of primary and secondary sources. So they're big, these are like compilations, right? Compilations of primary and secondary sources. Have a look at those. These are all open to you, right? So think, wow, here I thought all research that I had to do was just on the internet. No, right? Look at the possibilities. Look at the options. You're going to find so much good stuff if you just broaden out. It's not. I'm not saying don't use the internet. I'm just saying don't rely solely on the internet when you do your research. Take some time to look more broadly than that. Okay, so let's think about beginning and extending your search. How do we do that? Well, maybe start with a basic search. So you go to your local library. Maybe it's the public library. Maybe it's a university library. I've been teaching at 2 different universities. Each of them have their own library. So, a basic search is just you go to the main page for the library and you just type in some keywords, right? Basic search will turn up articles, book chapters, as well as books and ebooks related to your search terms. So my search terms there are wisdom, education, and school, and I hit search and this stuff comes up, right? And you can see how the library, the way they've organized it here, book article and book chapters come up on the one side, then books and media come up on the other side, along with dissertations and things like that. If you want more specific results, try an advanced search. So advanced searches, you don't just type in your education, wisdom in schools, right? But you can also type in, I'm looking for a specific author or a specific journal or a specific series or time period or anything like that. You can be more specific about the sorts of things that you want returned to you as hits. Okay, so that can be really valuable. You can also try changing your search terms to yield different but related relevant results. So instead of those three, or after I've used those three, I might just change it up a little and use three other ones that are related but slightly different, like education, philosophy, and contemplation, right? So I got all kinds of search hits on the first three. Now I'm going to try three different key terms, and slightly different hits will come up. You can see, right? Education, wisdom, schools might become education, philosophy, contemplation. And if you drill down on one of the listings in a search, occasionally the library may offer you algorithmically associated texts. So that means like articles that people grabbed who were interested in the article you just selected. You can check these out too. So this is similar to what, if ever you buy anything, like say off Amazon or, if you've looked at something on the internet or, they'll have a program that will find associated things that you might also like. So, for instance, if I've looked up something on practice wisdom, for instance, it says users interested in this article also expressed an interest in these articles. So sometimes, in other words, these new platforms that libraries are using can actually help you in your research. And, maybe you found a book or an article. Well, if you find a book or an article you like, you think, wow, this is really great, look in the bibliography for more hints about what's good to read. It's related to your topic, right? So, honestly, that's one of the best places to look after you found something that really resonated with you, that you thought, well, this is really great, I learned a lot from this article. You go back and you look at the bibliography or the works cited page, and you mine that, right? You look there to find more research, to get a more broad sense of the field. Or perhaps you'd like to search the journal databases by subject, right? So you go to journal databases, there's all the different subjects, right? Well, what's your subject that you're concerned with, right? So there's at my one university, there's at my other university. You can see there's a broad list of different databases, and you can search any one of those specifically. Or maybe there's a specific journal you'd like to focus in upon in your research, right? So if you know the name of a specific journal, you type in the name, or you search your library's access point alphabetically. So, I'm looking for, say, educational theory, right? There's the name of a specific journal, and there's the publication details for educational theory, right? And then I'm browsing down through, and it gives me all the issues there, and I see, there's volume 64, issue 2, April 2014. I'm looking for this particular volume. I click on that. And then I find the article that I'm interested within that issue. And I pull it up, and there it is. So you select, it's just a matter, this is how you hunt online. It used to be you had to go into the stacks and do this manually, but now all these things are available pretty much at your fingertips instantaneously if you have paid your tuition. Now, if you can't find the book or article that you need using library resources, some libraries have what they call interlibrary loan. or document delivery services, right? You can fill out an ILL request form and retrieve the article or book through DDS. They'll ship it to you from anywhere across Canada or internationally at lots of universities. I find that really, really, really helpful, particularly because our local university library isn't really that good. And this, I find that, the better library here in Alberta is up at the U of A. So they're, I've very, very often had lots of things shipped from Alberta, U of A, down to the U of C for pickup. And then there's other library research options beyond university resources, right? Universities have really wonderful libraries, but there's also the Calgary Public Library. They'll have different listings. They'll have different offerings, right, than are typically at a university library. And then also there's Library and Archives Canada, right? Lots of really great stuff that you can find at Library Archives Canada that you won't find elsewhere. Also, what about news websites or newspaper databases, right? CBC News, their website is really excellent. Or if you go to your local university library, they'll have a newspaper database very often. Pretty handy. It'll give you all kinds of access to not just, the stuff that you can get on the online like CBC News, but Financial Times, Foreign Broadcast Information Service, all these different newspapers, U.S. newspapers, Canadian newspapers, international newspapers. And another trick, not that I'm promoting a company or anything, but I like going to Amazon, honestly. Amazon, they use that algorithmic device, right, that, you type in searches, and then it'll suggest you all kinds of titles that maybe your local university library search doesn't come up with, right? So, it might give you some hits, in other words, that weren't suggested using the more academic systems. And what about think tanks associated with your research areas? So check their website. Sometimes they have their own extensive online library resources, right? So, when I was writing my book, I was looking into contemplative education and philosophy for children and these sorts of things. And, I go to the Garrison Institute or the P4C Cooperative or the Contemplative Mind and Society people. And yeah, man, they have some good resources on there. That's what their shtick is, right? Contemplative ed or philosophizing with kids. And so they'll have a whole bastion of information, papers, often publications, right on their websites that you can access. Then, of course, you can visit your local museum or check their online archives for research resources. We got the Glenbow here in Calgary. It's amazing. Their archives are amazing, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can access right online. Okay? Highly recommend that if you're doing historical research. And of course, there's always Google. But Google is not the only place you should go for research. Like, this is, I think, unfortunate about Google, that seems to be the only place that, students, particularly in high school and younger grades, they really look anymore. And it's partly because they're being forced to, and they're not being taught any different, because everybody's so fixated and enamored with technology in schools. But, it is a place. You have to learn how to use Google properly. You can do a basic Google search, right? There's a basic Google search using the same 3 criteria before: education, wisdom, and schools as my 3 search terms. What's going on here? There we go. Or you can try using Google Scholar to see if it helps you grab more authoritative or academic results, right? So when I type those same terms in there, different items come up. Okay, so That's another option, Google Scholar. And finally, there's YouTube, right? Video certainly counts as a research resource. YouTube is a great source, but don't forget also to consult the video databases that may be available at your university or college. So there's the ones at the U of C that are available, just some of them. And then, whatever sources you choose, ensure that you cite them correctly, using the style that's expected by your instructor. It seems like APA is the one that everybody uses these days. I find it the least useful, the most frustrating out of all of them, because it seems like nobody bothers to ever include page numbers with APA. I don't understand that. But anyway, MLA, I think that's great. Chicago Manual, that's my favorite. But just find out what your teacher or your professor requires, and then just be careful to be consistent. You'll find also too that even if you don't have one of these big manuals, you'll find lots and lots of information on how to use these, how to cite properly, right for free on the internet. The Owl Purdue website is really good for that. I would suggest them. And there's actually some websites that you'll find that all you do is you type in your bibliographic information, and you hit compute or calculate or whatever, and it'll spew it out in correct form for you, so you can actually avoid ever learning how to do it yourself. Okay? So thanks for listening. I hope this 3-part series was helpful for you.